Okay, so before we get going, this is the super informal discussion. If you guys, the students here, want to turn your cameras on and interact in any way, ask questions, feel free. It's super informal, so feel free. You can also type questions into the chat box if you prefer to do that. Let's see what else. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into it. So what I like to do to start out these discussions is to just kind of have both of you give us a kind of a general background of your history, where you were at when you were in law school, kind of where your mind was at, and then just kind of take us through your career path that led you to where you're at now. So Vanessa, let's start with you and just kind of give us a rundown of your experience.
Well, when I was in law school, I wasn't planning to be a family law attorney. I actually wanted to work at a big firm and be in competition with my colleagues and work as many hours as I could. But my husband is from Powell, Tennessee. And once we got married, I took the first job I could in Knoxville, which was in family law. And since then, since 2009, since I've been in Knoxville, I've done it ever since then. And I feel very lucky to be able to help people in really stressful and emotional situations. So although it isn't what I wanted to do, I feel very fortunate that I'm able to help out so many families. So that's kind of a little bit of how I got into it.
Yeah, Allison, what about you?
I would say no one sets out to be a family lawyer unless they have something really wrong with them. So it is a high stress, high emotion job that is very rewarding, as Vanessa said, but it is, I'd say, probably one of the most difficult areas because of the, every one of our clients is going through the absolute worst time of their life. So it requires a real level sensibility to be able to handle these situations. So when I was in law school, I certainly didn't set out to be a family lawyer. I took family law and I loved the course, but I had no desire whatsoever to go into family law. I don't even remember what I wanted to do, but I'm sure it involved saving the world or something like that. I think Knoxville is fairly small. And when I graduated in 2004, I wanted to stay here. And there were really only a couple of firms hiring at the time. And so I had an opportunity to work for Caesar Stair, who, one of the best family law attorneys ever in Knoxville. And it was a huge opportunity for me to train under one of the best attorneys. And I took that job and I've been in family law ever since.
Great, yeah. You both kind of hit on this, but I'm hoping you'll expand a little bit. So Allison, we'll stick with you first this time. So why is family law an important area of law to you, and how did that play into you deciding to stick with it as an area to focus on?
I'd say it stuck with me versus I stuck with it. As with anything, once you are in a practice for a period of time, you get a reputation for it, hopefully a good reputation. You know the area of law, you only know these other areas of law preparing for the bar exam. After that, you forget everything you learned in preparation for the bar exam, and you really are mostly working in usually one area of law. And so after several years of being in the area of family law, it became, for lack of a better word, my expertise, right? That's where I was well versed. That's what I was doing. That's what I knew what to do. I'm getting referrals now because I represented someone's friend and, they had a good experience. And so next thing you know, a practice is developed. And so once you're into it for so long, yeah, I could dabble in other areas, but that's risky, frankly. I mean, once you get into an area that you know and know well, the best thing to do is to stay with it.
Sure thing. What about you, Vanessa?
Yeah, and I agree with Allison. I think years ago, you could be a solo practitioner and take a little bit of everything, do criminal, wills, personal injury. I think those days are gone. And I find myself, all I've done is family law since I got out of law school. And I feel like every now and then I'll get something new that I haven't even dealt with. And this is all I've done. And so as tempting as it might be to, learn to do some criminal law, pick up immigration, I'd rather just continue to master my practice, my craft. And I will tell you, Allison's right, and you're going to hear a lot of this, is family law is very stressful. My husband's an attorney. He has probably worked maybe 5 weekends that I can think of in the last 14 years. I don't work 5 weekends in a given year. I mean, it's just different. I mean, I can't tell my clients who are stressing out about their, what's going to happen to their home, their children. I'll get to you when I can. They're waiting to hear from you. So it does require a lot. And I'll tell you, I was given an opportunity when I worked with what I consider one of the best family law attorneys, Sam English. I worked with him for about 3 years. I got to a point where I was just so unhappy, and I enjoyed working with Mr. English, and I enjoyed family law, that I actually kind of stepped back. I needed to find what I wanted to do. And in a month or 2, I slowly started getting my own referrals for family law. And I felt very blessed that we have such an amazing family law practice here in Knoxville, so many great family law attorneys, that they would want my services. And so I always look back that I had an opportunity 7 years ago to find another practice. I chose to come back to family law. And so I've told myself that the moment that I feel like my clients or this practice is a burden, it's probably best for my clients that I find something else to do, because it is really hard. But I always think back to that decision I had to make 7 years ago. And that really helps me push through those long, as Allison knows, those long days and long weeks. So that's kind of my experience with that.
I don't know if y'all can see the chat box, but one of the students had something pretty funny. Say
The other difference is you usually only talk to your criminal client like once or twice. Yeah. And you talk to your family law clients once or twice a day. So
Agreed. Agreed. That's exactly what I've heard. Yes.
Right. Okay. So Vanessa, we'll start with you on this one. So given the things that you've been talking about so far, what kinds of questions should students be asking now to help better determine whether or not they would like to pursue a career in family law?
I think one of the things, I mean, I didn't know this at the time in law school, is, the balance between work and home life. When I look back in law school, there was a lot of my classmates that this was kind of a second career. They had families, they were married. I think looking at that balance, because as I've said, it requires so much of you. I think it does. I don't know of any family law attorney that can work 40 hours a week. And maybe there are a few, but most of the family law attorneys I know that are really good at what they do put in a lot of time. And even those family law attorneys that only work 40 hours are usually have a much smaller caseload, but it does require a lot out of you. So I would ask myself, what do I expect with my new job getting out of law school as far as balance between work life and home life, and if you're planning to have small children at the beginning, all of that. I'm just lucky to do what I can because I have such a supportive and understanding husband who is in law. It's just he does something a little bit different and it works out for him. He works with corporations and businesses, and they're not open past 5, and so we're able to be a good team. So I guess it's kind of a little bit of, not just what you would ask yourself in law school, but for those that are married or are about to get married or have a serious relationship or partnership, of how that's going to impact that. I mean, attorneys in general, we're under a lot of stress. So for me, looking back, I would have asked myself that. But again, kind of like what Allison said, this wasn't what I was expecting to do either when I was in law school. So.
Yeah, for sure. Allison, what about you?
I think the biggest question is, do you want to litigate? And if the answer is yes, I want to litigate, this is probably the best practice for you to get into because you will litigate all the time. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean go to trial. When I get done this, I'm preparing for court tomorrow, and it's on a petition for contempt and a Rule 60 motion to set aside a final decree. And so there's all sorts of issues that are litigated along the way. So if you want courtroom experience, the question to ask is, am I okay with that? And most people know that answer. Okay. I've got, I'm in a firm here, and one of my partners is in transactional law. And there's no way in the world you would ever catch him in the courtroom, just absolutely zero desire to do it. And so I think a lot of people set out, I want to be this, big time corporate lawyer, environmental lawyer, and I want to be in the courtroom and I want to try cases. Well, guess what? You might try one case a year if you go into that area of law. If you're in family law, you will be in court every week. You will be in court every week. So it is a great opportunity to hone in the litigation skill and to have real trial practice experience.
Yeah, great. Let's stick with that theme right now. So Allison, we'll stick with you. So can you expand on that a little bit? What suggestions of either whether it's classes or experiences or internships, whatever it may be, that students could do now that could help better get trial practice for when they start their careers?
Well, I took trial practice when I was at UT Law, and Chancellor Weaver was my instructor. And those of you who don't know, he's one of our current judges. And I don't know if he's still doing it or our other judges are doing it, but that was the best class because that was practical. A lot of what you are learning in law school is theory and how to think and how to process issues. And you learn very little in law school about the actual practice of law, and law practice actually gives you some experience you put on a trial. And, frankly, your legal research and writing that happened in first year, if any of your first years, the legal writing, the trial practice, evidence. I wish I could go back and take evidence, and civil procedure. And, civil procedure, I remember learning it from Mr. Sobieski, and it was like, he was speaking a completely different language, okay? Because you haven't had the actual litigation experience at that point. I think if you actually litigated for a year and then went back and took a Civ Pro, it'd probably be more appropriate because at least now you know the lingo. But those are the most important classes. I mean, if you know your rules of civil procedure, your rules of evidence, and you can prepare an opening statement, a closing argument, do a direct examination and a cross examination, and that's the courtroom.
Sure thing.
I'm getting ready for court tomorrow, and what do I have with me? I've got my Tennessee Rules of Court, and it's the rules of civil procedure, and these go with me every time I go to court. I mean, it's you have to know them inside and out, just like the rules of evidence.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah.
That's what about you?
No, I absolutely agree. I think one of the best courses I took was also a pretrial class, as well as I was part of the mock trial team. And you're in court all the time. Like Allison, I'm going to be in Campbell County having a severe abuse trial tomorrow, and I've got to know my rules. And I agree with Allison. I wish at this point in my career I could go back and take like a little crash course on the rules of evidence, on civil procedure. I was in a 2-day divorce trial this week, and I had my rules of evidence there because I knew there was going to be tons of hearsay exceptions. And the things you learn in law school, you don't realize how practical and useful they are in family law because you hear it all the time. But I would say those courses were very helpful because even like Allison, when I took the family law course in law school, I enjoyed it. But at that point in time, I was like, well, this really isn't for me. It was just a very nice class to take. But I think rules of civil procedure and evidence, I mean, golly, if I could go back and do that, I would in a heartbeat.
I'm definitely taking notes to pass along to Tammy for potential CLE ideas.
Always.
I'm gonna pitch to her. Maybe we should just get some professors to give us some crash courses for the attorneys that are working. So besides classes, Vanessa, we'll stick with you. Can you speak to experience beyond just classes, suggestions for where to seek internships or courts to go to observe, or just stuff like that?
Yeah, so, family law encompasses quite a bit. There's kind of what you've heard us talking about. There's divorce, there's custody, there's also a big practice in juvenile court that deals with parents who have children outside of marriage and cases involving dependency, neglect, or severe abuse, children who have been abused. And I will tell you, in Knox County Juvenile Court, there is a huge need for new attorneys to come in and take court-appointed cases. And if any of you are interested in family law at all, I mean, that would be a great place to go if you're unable to secure a job. The magistrates, Judge Irwin, they're all very kind and willing to help. They will allow you to sit in the back of their courtroom. And probably on any given morning between 9 to noon, when the docket is called, you can watch 5 or 6 cases being heard, and some of them are contested preliminary hearings. In the afternoon, they usually have their trials. And they welcome young attorneys and even old attorneys who've been around that are looking for something new to come in and sit there. But that is a huge need that I believe Knox County has, because our dockets are so full and so many of our attorneys are double booked, meaning they might be in front of 3 different juvenile judges and then they're all waiting for the same attorney. And so they have that need, and they would want you to come in, sit there and listen to everything and see how it works. So you're ready to represent a parent or a child as a guardian ad litem. So I think, even though I didn't go to law school here in Tennessee, as a practitioner, I would tell you that is certainly a need. I've seen Judge McMillan, who handles a lot of our divorces downtown in Fourth Circuit Court, welcome law students to sit back, especially on orders of protection day, which I think Allison will agree with me, goes hand in hand with family law. He always welcomes students to sit in his courtroom. He even speaks to them, asks them if they have any questions. And I've seen that not as much, but with the chancellors as well. But I think those are good ways to come in there and watch and observe. And certainly I've had some students like reach out to me cold calls and say, Ms. Vano, can I come and, just watch for a month or 2? And I always welcome that, because I'd rather students find out if family law's for them before they commit to it. So, and I feel most family law practitioners in this area would feel the same way. So those are kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's great. Allison, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I was going to mention order protection day at Fourth Circuit Court. So on any given Thursday at the City County building downtown, it's real live Jerry Springer show. And it is a great example of a narrow issue and trying it. And, I know when I first started working here, fresh out of law school, just having got my license, Mr. Bernstein came to me and said, Allison, can you try this order of protection tomorrow? And I said, yes. What's an order of protection? Absolutely no clue what it is, but it is just a tiny little issue of, usually did you hit someone or harass someone or threaten someone? And are you entitled to a year of protection based on that conduct? So not all the time, but most of the time, it's as narrow of an issue of that. And so you can, get it the night before and go down there and try it the next day. And so whenever I think any firm gets a new lawyer, guess what? You're going to get all of the orders of protection, because I certainly did probably for the first 5 to 7 years. Because it's, not necessarily the funnest thing to go down to Fourth Circuit on a Thursday and sit and wait with a ton of other people for your case to get called. But you can go down there and really have an opportunity to watch probably 20 mini trials on any given Thursday. So that's great experience. If you have an opportunity to clerk somewhere, do it. I clerked all through law school here. And it's just, and when I was clerking, all I was doing was legal research and writing, and that's just great experience. We use it every day.
Yeah. I know we are at the KBA very aware of Order of Protection Day because it is by far the craziest day in our parking garage. There's just madness going on Main Street, walking to, there's a lot of interesting things going on Thursdays if you ever want to come downtown and check it out. Okay, so let's change the pace a little bit. So Allison, we'll stick with you first on this one. So what does your day-to-day life at work look like? You've spoke on this a little bit, but I'm hoping you'll expand a little bit. And how, if you can, does that area of law compare and contrast to other areas?
What's my day-to-day life? Vanessa talked about kind of that work family balance, which is, I feel like I've obtained. I'm married. I have a lovely husband who also, like Vanessa, is very understanding and has great consideration. When I have to work late, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts. He's in charge of the kids and doing dinner and putting them to bed and all of that. And maybe I'll see you tomorrow because I'm probably going to work late and I've got to get up first thing in the morning and I'll be gone before the kids go to school. But that's not my everyday, okay? And a lot of it is, frankly, because I have wonderful help. I have an associate who graduated 2 years ago, Haley Chastain, and she is my right hand. And she's exceptional, and I can't do what I do without her. She works with me on every single case I have. I take her everywhere I go. And if I am in a mediation all day, or if I'm in client meetings all day, she's able to field calls for me. Versus when I didn't have someone like that in that role for me, I'd have to get out of my meetings and then I'd have to sit here for 2 or 3 hours and return all the calls for the day. And so really having that assistance has tremendously helped my practice and really kind of given me the freedom to be home at a normal hour, which didn't necessarily exist early on in my practice.
Yeah. Vanessa?
Well, I am striving to grow up to be like Allison. Unfortunately, I still have not found that balance, but honestly, my husband always reminds me it's because you really do love what you do. And working mom guilt or a working parent guilt is always there. But my days usually start at 7 a.m. because I'm in court almost every day. This week was no exception. And I've got to return emails. I've got to get pleadings prepared. I've got to prepare for court. I've got to return phone calls. So I allow myself at least those 2 hours between 7 till I go to court at 9 to make some early morning phone calls, draft paperwork, dictate letters, and return some emails, because I'm sure Allison can agree we get lots of emails. And I'm in court usually most days, mediation or depositions between 9 to 5. And so if I'm in court every day, which happens most of the time, then I have to work at least from 5 to 7 to return those calls I missed and return those emails. And usually I try to be home before my 3 sons go to bed. And once they do, I probably do another hour to 2 before I go to bed. And it's a grind. It's a grind for me. And I think my husband must be right that I must love what I do and love trying to help my clients. But I do make myself take time off so I don't get burnt out, because we as attorneys and you all, when you all become attorneys, are of no use and no help to your clients or to our legal community if you're burnt out and you're tired. So I do force myself, but in general, given any week, that's what it's like. And really, I think Allison and some of our other family law attorneys have found the right key where they have another attorney helping them out. I'm at a place where I'm still a solo practitioner, and I have been for the last 7 years. And I don't have that. And I like to be very hands-on. But I think there has to be some sort of balance. And I do like Allison's approach, but I'm not there yet. And it's nothing to aspire to. I don't think it's anything to aspire to, but that's unfortunately kind of what my average day looks like.
Yeah. Okay, so Vanessa, we'll stick with you. So this was a question submitted by a student in the registration process. It's a short and sweet question. And I think since Vanessa, you're a solo practitioner and Allison, you're at a firm, so maybe there would be some interesting answers here, but just short and sweet. How do you meet billable hours and what is your pay based on?
Oh, my I guess my base is based on what clients come in and hire me. I don't know of many family law attorneys that don't bill at an hourly rate. I do try to send out invoices out to my clients every 2 to 3 months because it helps. Everyone wants to fight for everything and I'm there for them. But I always tell all my clients, it's not fair to my client who is doing what they can to stay on top of their invoice and for me to devote all my time to you and we're not taking care of our invoice because I only have so much time in a day. So, you know, it just varies. But you know, everything has gone well thus far. And again, I feel very lucky, but I'm not sure if that answered the question correctly or not, but that's kind of my thoughts on that.
I don't think it requires much of a complex answer, but yeah. What about you, Allison?
Well, for me, I started out as an associate. So, you know, I'm hired at a firm that, you know, our firm isn't huge, but for Knoxville, it's a decent size. I think right now we've probably got about 12 lawyers. And when Caesar hired me, I was hired as an employee of the firm. And so I had a set, very modest salary to start out. I'd say, you know, Knoxville doesn't pay young lawyers a lot of money right out. Okay. And it's kind of this expectation, you put in the work, it will pay off if you stick with it. Okay. But I started out as an employee. My, you know, salary, W-2 employee, my salary, you know, increased slightly every year. And then after about 7 years of being here, and when we're talking about billable hours, you know, I was here to make money for the partners. And, you know, when they're considering me for partnership, the consideration is, what am I billing? How am I working? What are my collections? You know, the business of the practice of law, I think, is where we do our young lawyers wrong, okay? Because we're not taught that in law school. And you're running a business, okay? And you have to not just, you know, practice law and go and represent your clients, but you also have to run a business. And so after I was generating enough income, you know, lo and behold, I'm not just working on Caesar's cases anymore. Now I have my own caseload. My collections got to a certain level. At that point is when I was considered for a partner. And I've now been a partner here for, I guess, 10 years. I'm one of the, you know, 3 senior partners of the firm now, because Mr. Bernstein's retired and Caesar Stair's retired and Tom McAdams have now retired. And so, you know, on up the ladder you go. And once you're a partner, we're actually a true partnership. And very few firms in town are a true partnership. And that is, I have a percentage. And my percentage is once we pay all the bills and pay the employees, if there's any money left over, I get my percentage of it. And so on the 15th and the 30th of each month, I get a draw and I have no clue what it will be ever.
Yeah. I like it.
It's also so exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah. I hope that it does give you, I like the juxtaposition of both of your practices, because it gives you insight into Vanessa's running her own, you know, hung her own shingle, run her own thing, doing the business sides of things, and
I've got a bookkeeper who gets my bills out every month, and she's on me right now to make sure all my time's in, you know, and then it magically happens here for me, you know, so I'm really lucky that that's not something I have to worry about. I write down my time, I keep track of everything I do all day. At the end of the day, the goal is always to have at least 8 hours written down. Some days it's less, some days it's more. Yesterday I had an eye appointment. I had to take the dog to the groomer. Life happens, and I didn't get to the number 8 on my pad, but today I'll exceed it. So,
okay, we're about halfway done. Allison and Vanessa, if you both don't mind, if you wouldn't mind entering your emails into the chat so the students could come down and use them as a resource / reference moving forward. I really appreciate that. And then, of course, if y'all, there's a few of you here, if you have any questions, either feel free to jump in, turn on your mics, whatever you want to do, or just type them into the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, so Vanessa, we'll go back to you. So a little bit of a change of pace. So students are always encouraged to seek out mentoring relationships. What kinds of things were you looking for in your current mentors, and what steps did you take either while in law school or early in your career to foster and build those relationships?
Well, I wasn't lucky enough to really have a mentor in law school. I didn't know any lawyers when I went to law school. It was just something kind of like Allison said, I went wanting to save the world and something, I'm sure something like that. And I wanted to argue, right? All the silly reasons. They're not silly. They're important at what drives you to go to law school. To go. But once I graduated and I began working here in Knox County, I've had 2 employers, Miss Linda Welch, who gave me my first chance in Knox County and really introduced me to the legal community. And then my former, who used to be my adversary, Mr. Sam English, who later offered me a job to work at his firm. And despite that we parted ways 7 years ago, he has truly become my friend, mentor, and colleague. And that has been invaluable to me, that relationship, that mentorship, because like I said at the very beginning, even though all I've done is family law, and as long as I do it, I mean, it's just wonderful to be able to have somebody who's even more seasoned than myself to go to and say, what would you do? How should I handle this? I'm at a roadblock. What else can I do? Because they'll think of things you never even thought of. And I treasure that. And certainly when I have some attorneys that are in family law that haven't been practicing as long as I have, and they reach out to me, Vanessa, what would you do? I'm always happy to help because I know how much that has helped me. And most family law attorneys I know are willing to help out one another because we all know what we know, because usually it's been passed down from what we learned from others. But I think for those of you that are able to find a mentor connection in law school, I can't imagine how wonderful that must be or will be. I didn't have that, unfortunately, but I do now as a practitioner, and it is invaluable. And believe me, I thank him just about every week for all the advice and guidance he gives me. So hopefully you all will be able to find somebody, and it could be somebody like the former mentor, somebody you clerked with.
I started working here, I think it was my last semester of law school. So I'm a lifer at Bernstein Sterry McAdams. I've been here since my second semester of my 3rd year of law school. Prior to that, I was at Butler, Vines and Babb, and I clerked there for a couple of years. And I, in fact, took 2 years off between undergrad and law school and was a runner. I was a runner there. They saw that my resources were being wasted as a runner. And next thing you know, I'm doing paralegal work and answering the phones and doing what else they needed. So, I kind of got my feet wet there early on, even before I went to law school. And I established relationships with everyone in that firm, which was great to have. Okay. And I think every single one of them told me, don't go to law school. Are you sure you want to do this? But when I started working for Caesar, my last semester of law school, and then, he took me on, and it's probably rare, and I'm thankful for it, but it was a true mentorship. He took me everywhere he went. And that is, be it deposition, mediation, court, client meetings. And when he didn't take me, and mind you, we don't bill for that, okay? And so if I'm sitting there with Caesar because we're both at a mediation, my time is written off. Because how we do it at our firm is, it's going to pay off eventually because you are learning to be a lawyer, right? And so he took me everywhere he went. Even I'd have to sit in his office and watch him fill out time slips, okay, and talk on the phone, and there's an art to that. You're learning the finesse of negotiation and talking to clients and talking to attorneys. And so I'm forever grateful that I had that true mentorship of hands-on all day forever, really. I mean, I still have it, but for years until I started kind of going off on my own, but he was still there for me. And I still had a million questions, as you will, okay? I still have questions today, and I'm thankful I can cross the hall and go to my law partner and run an idea off them. Hey, I've got this hearing in the morning. What do you think? This is how I'm thinking of it. What do you think? But one thing I'll always remember, is when Caesar was mentoring me, it wasn't just about the practice of law. It was, hey, what do you want to do in this community? What are you interested in? It was really kind of a whole person. And he got me plugged in. When I say he took me everywhere, it wasn't just during the day. It was events at night. It was, going to fundraisers, going to nonprofit events. Next thing you know, he's got me serving on 3 different nonprofit boards and serving on committees and all this. Well, what does that do? One, it gets you plugged into the community, okay, and helping, right? But 2, you are creating a network of people. And I can tell you people that I met, 18 years ago on my first summer supper for Knox Heritage has probably referred me cases since then. And so, I think when you start in the practice, when we're talking about, life, work balance, work, family balance, all that, it's also, what's your role in this community outside of being a lawyer, outside of being a spouse, outside of being a parent? And that's something that's always been important to this firm, is also being very connected in the community. And I hope I'm doing that for Haley right now. She sits across from me. She goes everywhere I go. I've kind of have these flashes of oh God, I remember this torture that I went through that I'm now putting her through, but I'm forever grateful for it. She will tell me, Allison, thank you for just letting me watch you practice law. Just sit on the phone. It may seem ridiculous, but there really is a finesse to this, and learning how to deal with people and how to solve problems. That's what we are. We're problem solvers.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to Vanessa for this question. So you both have kind of spoke this a bit, but I'm hoping for maybe some more practical tips or something like that. But obviously practicing, you spoke to the fact that practicing, and especially in family law, is very serious and chaotic. You feel like you have a pretty good work-life balance, and what tips would you have for students that are worried about that aspect of practicing in family law?
My tip would be avoid family law. No, just kidding. I only say that because Allison and some of my other colleagues have done a wonderful job of doing the work-life balance. I haven't, and I admit that. I admit that. I always tell, my clients always appreciate when I could spend all day Saturday prepping them for trial. They don't have to miss work, and they can come in here, and we're here all day Saturday without any interruptions, and they appreciate that. And I'm always telling them I'm able to do this because of the support I have at home. I have wonderful in-laws who help me with my sons, a wonderful husband who supports what I do. I haven't been able to find that. And I think part of it is just kind of the personality type. I mean, you know how you are. I've always loved to work hard. I worked, at least I believe I did. I worked this hard even when I worked for my employers, when I worked with Miss Linda Welch, when I worked with Mr. Sam English. I was there all the time for them also. It's not that I'm working more now because I'm a solo practitioner. It's how I'm built. And so I would caution you that if you're kind of like myself, like a workaholic, family law it will consume you. And so, like I said, I literally, I will tell myself, especially on the weekends when I am home on Saturday, I will have to tell myself from noon to 4, don't check your emails. I will make myself stop from not noon to 4, because I will, even if I'm just sitting there with the kids outside, I want to look and I want to get my clients their answers right away. And that's not fair to my family. And honestly, it's not fair to my clients, because what that'll do is it makes you resentful. It makes you resentful that you're always on the clock. And so even for somebody like me, who's kind of a workaholic, I will make myself, like this Saturday, like I've already told myself, because I had to work all this weekend, I've told myself this Saturday is just for my family. I'm not going to draft a pleading. I'm not going to work on billing. I'm not going to check emails. I'm going to work. Well, I'll probably check emails. I'm lying. I am going to check emails on Saturday, but like I'll make myself devote a certain period of time. And sadly, it's probably not enough time for my personal life, because I need to, because you will get burnt out. And I think Allison and I see that all the time. I've seen some wonderful family law attorneys that after a couple of years, they go find a different area of practice of law. They go into Social Security. They go become an administrative judge. We get burnt out, and I don't want to do that to myself. So that's my way of trying to find that work-life balance, is making myself put down the phone, put down the work, and be present for our loved ones. So that's kind of what I've had to do.
You, Allison?
I think the biggest for me would be what I call calendar preservation. Okay. And so I'm very mindful at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to plug in, because if I don't plug it in, it won't exist. And that is spring break, fall break, all right, the day after President's Day, whatever it is that I want to take off because it's my kids' days off from school, I go ahead and plug it in the calendar. And I mean, I'm telling you, on January 1, it goes in. I will carve out a week or two of the summer, not having any plans whatsoever, but knowing if I don't carve it, it will get filled with, I'll get a notice of trial that comes in the mail, and it'll just go on the calendar. Well, there goes that week. Okay, well, now the next thing you know, the summer's gone. And so calendar preservation and really making time, for yourself, carving it out, knowing, hey, I'm going to say no during this week. If someone wants me to mediate a case for them, or if, we're trying to set a trial, that's a no week. That's a week I'm going to be on vacation. And then managing your calendar on the day-to-day, for me, if I've got a trial, a big, huge divorce trial on a Wednesday, I'm not gonna schedule anything on Monday or Tuesday. Now, stuff will come up, because it does in family law. There's always an emergency, and any day you set aside from yourself isn't always going to just be a full day to do work on that case. But that's how I'm managing my calendar is, all right, if I've got something on Wednesday that I really believe is going forward, which we'll get to that probably here in a minute. You've got to be able to be very adaptive in the family law practice, because one day you think you're going to the trial. Well, guess what? You're going to get a call the day before, and something will have happened. And next thing you know, you are not going to trial the next day. Or you go down to trial and you're trying to settle it, and you're outside the courtroom and you're spending 3 hours in settlement negotiations, and you don't go anywhere. And guess what? In 2 minutes, now you got to change your brain and start trying the case and litigating. So it is a zigzag practice, but managing the calendar and making sure I set enough time aside that I and my client will be prepared for court is really important. And I too, I've got, clients who, I've had a doctor client this last year who particularly, she's got 100 patients during the day. Well, I'm going to meet her every time after work, at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, because, and she hired me because of it. She'd interviewed a few other people, and the fact that I was able to get her in and work her in on evenings or on the weekends was she was very thankful for that. But that's not always the case. I'll work on the weekend if I have to, and I don't always have to. And like I said, I'm thankful for the support staff that I have, because but for that, I wouldn't be able to have the downtime that I do on the weekends or in the evening.
Yeah, sure thing. Great tips there. I really appreciate those answers. Okay, sorry, Allison, we'll stick with you. I have a few more prepared questions here. So if you all have any questions you want to get in, type them into the chat real quick. I'll be sure to acknowledge them. If you have anything super specific you want to ask these two. So Allison, we'll start with you again. You both have been very honest about the fact that family law deals with people, a lot of them on their worst days of their lives. It's many cases involve very dark or traumatic circumstances. So how do you deal with the secondhand trauma of litigating cases with darker circumstances, and what tips would you have for students that are worried about that?
Good question. I think having a great life outside of work helps. I'm married to the nicest man in Knoxville, hands down. And he does everything with a smile, from bringing me coffee in the morning to, oh yeah, I'll get the kids, no problem. And so having that support is really helpful. He knows when I've got a trial the next day. Okay. Not because I've told him, because he can read it all over me. And if you're a good lawyer, you won't be able to rid yourself of that. Okay. I'm going to not be able to sleep. I'm going to be up all night. I'm going to be thinking about it because it's game time and I'm in the zone. So there's really only so much you can do. But how I try to look at it, I met with a lady this afternoon for 2 hours, 30-year marriage. She's bawling her eyes out. And how I try to deal with it is, my goal is, if you come to see me, that you feel a little bit lighter when you leave, because I have helped give you some clarity. I have helped answer some questions that were bothering you. And if you don't leave here lighter, then I haven't done my job. Okay. And I can sense that. I mean, I can sense the client kind of exhales, thank you so much, for the information. Thank you for answering my questions. And so, you just have to realize that you are helping someone. Okay. And yeah, she was telling me some heavy stuff about emotional abuse. And all I can tell you is I'm going to be here to help her. And I think it comes with time. I certainly didn't have probably the best management of that. I think particularly if I probably always considered myself an empath. And, when you hear these things, you sometimes tend to carry it for too long. And I just think time and experience, you learn how to process it, learn to move on, learn to help the next person. But, I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. I've got plans with my girlfriends, and we're going to go see the opera and, have, some cocktails before. And, you just have to, life outside of this is really important.
Good thing, yeah. That's what about you?
Yeah, well said, Allison. Yeah, we've made mention about, how most of us go to law school wanting to help people, and that's really what we do a lot in family law. And I agree that when you see these individuals coming in and, they've been married for 40 years and they're just devastated, or sometimes they come in and say, I've needed to do this for so long, but it's finally the time. It's a great sense of feeling when you feel like you've at least helped them or answered some of their questions. But for me, it's those special times I get to spend with my family that help. And it just kind of recharges me. It recharges me. And that's why I remind myself that as much as I want to work 7 days a week, I need to take time and recharge for the sake of my clients and my practice. Because I agree that once we're able to go and be with your family or be with your friends and do something personal for yourself, you just feel better. You know, for me, it's trying to squeeze in 10 or 15-minute workouts just to be able to focus on me and to be able to tell myself I did something good for myself, even though I eat horrible all week long. It's those little things. And, you know, it sounds kind of silly, but, you know, it goes a long way just to be able to be recharged. You're just a better professional. I think we're more on our toes. I think we're just recharged, you know, ready to be there for our client, because sometimes, like Allison said, we've got to be the ones kind of carrying our clients and helping them to that finish line, because it's a marathon. It's a marathon. You know, I've had clients change attorneys halfway through because they're like, I feel like my former attorney's just given up. And the reality is sometimes attorneys just get worn out as well. And I think we owe it to ourselves and our clients to be able to kind of recharge our own batteries. And so I certainly, you know, make sure to do that because I want to continue to be of service to my clients. So that's certainly very important in whatever you do.
Yeah. We've something we've noticed here at the KBA too is something you all have given to us as feedback of program you want. We're really trying to implement a focus on mental health for our members, trying to have programming. We're having a wellness expo every year now. So something that students can also attend if you want to get a jump start on maybe some strategies or tips for managing your stress levels and depression levels, whatever it may be, the things that you have to deal with as an attorney. So recommend all of that. So, okay, we got a couple more questions here and we will get out of here.
Let me say one thing. Alcohol is not the answer, you know, and I think across the board, you can see lawyers fall into that easily and quickly. And I've done it myself at times, and not that I ever abused alcohol, but that thought that I got to go home and have a glass of wine it's a slippery slope, and it's a terrible outlet. Go for a walk, okay? Go get a massage, go call your friend on the drive home, do something else, save that for a Friday night, Saturday night. It's a real easy thing to slip into.
I agree with Allison, and I think that's so important. In fact, me and a fellow attorney out of Blount County who's been doing this a long time, we're both joking after this trial, we need to go have a glass of wine. And we both said at the same time, we don't drink after a bad day in court, after a stressful day, because I don't want to associate that negativity that my release is alcohol. Mm-hmm. And it's tempting. And he and I both said the same thing. And it's rare when I have something to drink because it's usually in celebration or something celebratory, because I think it's just so easy to fall in that trap. And you know, it's very easy. So you just got to be careful with that and find some healthy alternatives. And
this is coming from someone who's surprised my liver still functions after law school. Okay. So I'm certainly no prude when it comes to that. But when you're in a high stress situation and every day is stressful and you come home, yeah, guess what? That does take the edge off, and you just got to be careful not to do it.
Awesome. So we have a question here, so I'm gonna get to that. So, is it Jaren?
Yeah, it's Jaren.
Okay, close enough. Good. All right. So she says, this past summer, I had the opportunity to write my own and my twin brother adoption papers. I think I said that right. Okay. Maybe you saw me on the news, but I was wondering, with your practice, do you have any experience with adoptions? I didn't know how often they occurred here in Knoxville. Allison, we'll go with you.
Yeah, right now, pretty much the only adoptions that I handle are step-parent adoptions. And, you know, Dawn Kopic is kind of the local expert, okay? And if you haven't read her book, read it. She's
also an expert on cocktails, not to derail us from what we just talked about, but sorry, go ahead.
But if you're doing any other adoption, she's the person I would go to, call to, ask the question, okay? Because it is one of those things where, yeah, check this box, check this box, check this, did I do this? Check this box, check this box. And I just don't do it enough so I don't do them, frankly, okay? Unless it's a step-parent adoption, because, you know, that's just usually a little bit easier, frankly, okay?
That's how I got to do
it. Yeah. But I certainly do those, but I haven't handled maybe one or two, but enough to know that someone who does this all the time is the person who needs to do adoptions.
What about you, Vanessa?
So I do step parent adoptions, and I also do adoptions where the Department of Children's Services is involved when they're trying to terminate a parent's parental rights, or when foster parents are finalizing the adoption. So those are usually the type of adoptions I do, and I'm very picky with which petitions to terminate I take on where it comes to defendant, like representing the parent whose rights are about to be terminated, because it's a lot of work. And I think, and I tell all of my potential clients this, it is for me one of the most stressful cases I can take, because I feel the immense amount of pressure that your rights might be terminated forever. And I tell them, I need you just as involved in this as I do. So usually for me, like a red flag when they come in, if they've been served and they're like, well, I've got court next week. To me, that's a red flag. Like, this is like, I'm panicking for them. Like, I can't be more panicked about your rights getting ready to be terminated than me. So that's usually a red flag for me, because I want them involved, because my God, I will fight for them, but I can't be the one dragging you along, helping me get all the evidence I need. So those kind of cases I'm very particular on. And every now and then I'll get a really good one where they're just as involved in it. And those are some of the most satisfying days in court, when you are able to successfully defend a termination because of it was just bad timing, bad facts, a father who was involved, who was lied to about the birth of their child. And when you're able to go into court and establish all that and successfully dismiss that termination and give this father a chance, it's the best feeling. So I do a little bit of both. I do them, and I also defend against them. So, you know, I get to do both, which I enjoy.
Great, yeah. Okay, so final question here. I'd like to ask this at the last part of every program. It's kind of a dumb question, but we tend to get some interesting answers. So just short and sweet. Vanessa, we'll stick with you first. So what do you see as the next big thing or the next big development in family law?
Oh,
I'm glad you asked her first.
No right or wrong answer. I know I stump people with, but yeah.
You know what I was thinking of? All I was envisioning was me looking down like this at what's in front of me and not looking up to see what new legal issues. I'm sure there's something new. Maybe the embryo adoptions, those embryo contracts. That seems to be, there's more and more of it, but that seems to be new. I know a local attorney by the name of Shelley Breeding has been very successful with those types. I haven't seen any come across my practice, but I know the legislator has been working on updating those laws because that's becoming more and more frequent. I mean, that's the first thing that comes up to the top of my head.
Yeah, I've never even heard of that, so that's interesting. Yeah. Allison, you got anything?
The next big thing, I think we're looking at the next big thing that's entered our practice, and that's called Zoom. And the pandemic has changed our practice. You know, our courts were shut down for 8 months over a period of 1.5 years or so. And to suddenly have hearings remotely like this, has been, I'm not the most tech savvy individual, so it has been a learning curve for me. There are parts of it that I have liked. There are parts of it I have really disliked. You know, having a full trial via Zoom and trying to introduce exhibits and evidence, and, you know, you lose, I think, that feeling in the courtroom when you're cross-examining someone, when it's just a screen. You know, I really feel like I can usually get under someone's skin. And it is not as easy to do when you're, you know, shielded by the screen, but I think we're going to be seeing more of it. I'm frankly surprised we saw as much of it as we did. You know, in some respects, it's been helpful, more affordable to the client. Now that we have, whenever you get divorced, you have to have an agreed divorce hearing. That used to involve going down to the courthouse, meeting your client there, taking them in chambers, swearing to the judge that, yeah, we've got an agreement, and the judge rubber stamps it. It could end up being an hour of my time. Now it's a 5-minute phone call or Zoom, so I think we're going to start seeing some of those, really things that don't require any evidence, arguing, announcing agreements. I'm hopeful we see more stuff like that happen remotely, electronically, via Zoom, because it is way more affordable for the client. So I kind of feel like we're already in the next, big thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be evolving more and will be, I think, even more common going forward.
Yeah. One of the interesting answers I heard last night was that we did the government law program last night, and they, an employee of KBA who's been working at home since the beginning of the pandemic, and they are still up in the air about whether or not they're going to go back to the office, and essentially said that at least in government work, the borders and you can live anywhere and work for the TVA in particular. So it's just interesting. Yeah, we're in a crazy time. You don't have to necessarily relocate for new jobs or anything. So, okay, that is all the time we have, and that flew by. So I really appreciate everybody being here. Allison and Vanessa in particular, thank you so much. We know your time, as you've explained to us, is very valuable, and you're very busy. So the fact that you even responded to my invitation email and you even saw it is a miracle, and we really appreciate it.
It'll be $350.
It's after 5 o'clock though. I don't know.
So that's double. I get to bill double then.
To the students, we're gonna, if you want to revert back to any of this, we're gonna put this on YouTube. We have 2 more programs next week. I forget off the top of my head what they are, but I'd love to see everybody in there and talk to a couple other attorneys about another area of law. But thanks again, everybody, for being here, and specifically Vanessa and Allison. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Have a good night.
Have a great day.
Good luck to you all.